Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome one and all to episode number 30 of The Adventure Continues, a Star Trek discussion, a bi-weekly Saturday night program where we take a look at a specific episode from Star Trek's original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, or one of the 10 movies, and we watch it and discuss it sometimes with guests, sometimes with all of you in the chat. But tonight, we are going to be watching and talking about the episode from Star Trek The Next Generation Night Terrors. Now, this was the 17th episode to be produced during Next Generation's fourth season. Sorry, I had to adjust myself in my chair. That's why there was that pause. But, anyways, this was the 17th episode of Next Generation's fourth season. It follows after a few episodes after Wesley has already left the series. Of course, you had the season premiere in season 4 of Next Generation with Best of Both Worlds Part 2. And of course, there is a reference to some of the events in that episode in this particular episode. But this was a episode where you could really see how the formula was going to be for Next Generation now that you had Riker, Picard, Data, Geordi, Troy, Worf, and Dr. Crusher. And you would have those members of the cast going forward. And, one of the things about this episode that I always liked about it was the fact that the crew starts to lose their minds a little bit, and it starts going into a little bit of that horror aspect. But if you haven't seen this episode before, you will be able to see exactly what I'm talking about when we get into the episode. But I do want to say hello to those of you who are over in Cosme. Of course, those of you who are in the chat as well. In the YouTube chat, we got Lady Mist. And Lady Mist, thank you again for that $2 super sticker you sent on Thursday night after the Mouse PI for Hire stream. Thank you very much. And of course, I also want to say thank you for Tim, also known as FKHC 2005, for signing up for Stealth is Optional membership Thursday. Really appreciate it, brother. Of course, we also have Shane and Dork Girl. They're both in the Cosme, and Shane's in the chat, so greetings to you both. I hope you both get that camping trailer that you were telling Steven about. Fingers crossed, and hope that part of your journey begins very smoothly. But without further ado, let's not waste too much time here, and let's get into tonight's episode. And of course, if you would like to watch tonight's episode along with us, let me just bring this up real quick so folks at home can see how they can watch the episode. There's the Cosme link pinned in the chat on YouTube, Rumble, and Blaze. Click on that Cosme link. It'll bring you directly into the Pacific Forum 4 room over on Cosme, where you can sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode along with us. Of course, ask questions about the episode and what was happening in Next Generation leading up to this episode. So let's go ahead and hit play. But I hope everyone is doing well on this Saturday. So you're already getting the setup. There's a distress call. The USS Britain at the binary stars, as you see. And there's been no communication from them for the last 2 weeks. So something is going on. And Shane, what was Cosme giving you trouble about, brother? Let's make this full screen. And really, for this episode, at least in my opinion, there's really no A plot and B plot because every part of the story centers around one central plot. And of course, the Britain's just a reuse of the Miranda class Reliant model from the Wrath of Khan. They would often do that for a lot of the models that they had. They would reuse them as different ships. It was been used as the Britain. It's been reused as the Saratoga among other ships. Same with the Excelsior from Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. That's been used as the Hood and several other ships throughout the run of Next Generation and also parts of DS9. And of course, as far as the Miranda class slash Reliant model, that was also used in Star Trek First Contact. But you see, with the bridge crew having been murdered in one fashion or another, something has been going on. And as is customary with all episodes of The Adventure Continues, the Star Trek discussion, I do let the intro play. The only time I won't let the intro play is if we're watching a two-part episode and we get to that second part, then I tend to want to skip it because we've already seen it once. And the way I look at it, you want to get into that second part of the episode to see what's going on, especially for anyone who might be watching the episode for the first time. And of course, this version of the episode is the remastered version that was released, I want to say, 12 years ago? Let me just double check myself real quick. All right, 13 years ago. 13 years ago was when season 4 of Next Generation was released as an AC remaster. And of course, for this episode, you'll see exterior shots of the Enterprise D using the 4-foot model that they used and also the 6-foot model that they used. And with both the crew member from the Britain and Troy being Benison, they can communicate with each other telepathically. and they're already having a problem trying to get the engines back online on the Britannia. And it gets more mysterious from there. Oh, yeah, it's getting worse from what Dr. Crusher was able to deduce from her autopsies. And here's another piece of news. And Door Girls say maybe this is where Serenity got the idea for the Reavers. You know, the captain lost her mind. A mysterious voice. There you see Troy's in some sort of realm, but you see the two binary stars. That's still a constant. Now, what does that mean? Eyes in the dark, one moon. And what does that other clue mean? One eye in the dark, eyes in the dark, one moon, one circles. Just keep watching the episode. So for Troy, that was a nightmare. Pay attention to that. I've always liked how the captain's logs, or any of the logs, are used to help move along the plot in all the Star Trek series. And Geordi's frustrated because they've done everything by procedure to get the engine started on the Britannia, and they're still not operating. And the ensign's hearing something. Oh, the ensign's mind is playing tricks on him. Other than Andrews, the other people are dead on the ship. So what's going on? I hear voices in my head. They talk to me. They understand. If you're a wrestling fan, you know that's Randy Orton's theme. And look at the look on his face. He's seen something. He knows something. And there's Chief Miles Edward O'Brien. And he's irritated. And Keiko's complaining. And also, this episode takes place shortly after Miles and Keiko were married, we're getting more clues what's happening on the Enterprise too. A ghost being seen in engineering, things that are unexplainable happening on the Enterprise. And how many times have you had somebody come to your door constantly knocking or ringing the doorbell? And then by the time you get there, no one's there. That's essentially what's happening to Picard right now. And this episode first aired on March 18th, 1991. Picard's surprised to see Dr. Crusher and Troy there at the door because a few moments ago there was nobody at the door with the chime going off. So they're making a correlation with everybody starting to lose their minds. It all started once they went aboard the Britannia. They even got closer to the Britannia. Of course, you just heard Picard say they're preparing to take the Britannia in tow with the tractor beam. Now, the same issues that Jordy had on the Britannia to get the engines going are starting to happen on the Enterprise. Keep watching, Door Girl. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. Same as the Pertain. The Pertain had lost contact, and it'd been 2 weeks since I heard from the Pertain. Now the Enterprise sending out a distress signal. That distress signal traveling through subspace will take 2 weeks to reach anybody. Awesome, brother. That's the best way to watch Star Trek is with someone. So we're learning about what what Tychon's crew did when they were trapped in this similar anomaly, also known as Tychon's Rift. But with the Enterprise losing its power, it cannot replicate any of the compounds that it needs to actually escape. Well, of course, Data's not affected by everything that's going on. He's an android. He's not susceptible to what's going on. And again, if you're just coming by and you'd like to watch the episode, click on that Cosme link that's pinned to the chat on YouTube, Blaze, and Rumble, and join us. And they're coming up with a plan because everybody's succumbing to whatever it is that's going on. In my opinion, I think season 4 had some pretty good episodes. And one of the episodes, of course, it is Q related. I could have picked another Q related episode for tonight, but I chose not to. And the episode I could have chosen from this season is Cupid. And, you know, of course, you have the season finale, Redemption Part 1. That's a very good episode, in my opinion. And you have an episode where Jordy's turned into a creature, and the only way you can spot him is by using ultraviolet light. And the only stoic Picard is losing his mind. Got chat on my tablet, the YouTube on the Roku, and Cosme on Dorky's second monitor. That's one way to do it, man. And everybody's being affected. What do you see what Worf attempts to do? And Riker's gonna take a short lap, or is he? Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? Well, there are people that have fear of snakes and probably a fear of snakes being in their bed. Some people fear spiders. Some people fear heights. I can handle heights up to a certain extent. But if it gets too high, I ain't climbing that ladder. Not unless I actually have to. And Picard could be talking about dementia in relation to his grandfather, or even Alzheimer's. Can you imagine being an extra and being told, "Okay, we're gonna put some baby powder on you and some other powders to make you look like a dead corpse, and all you got to do when we remove the sheet from you is just look like you're dead." And this next shot, I almost thought about using it for tonight's thumbnail. Just close your eyes and everything will be fine, right? And that last exterior shot was of the 4-foot model that they used for filming. And the difference between the 4-foot model and the 6-foot model, the Enterprise D that they used for shooting, was that the 4-foot model actually had the windows for 10 forward, while the 6-foot model did not. In other words, if we don't enter REM sleep, we go crazy. There's a lot more. The plot's just thickening. You gotta give the makeup crew credit to make the actors look like they're deprived of sleep, not just making some of the hair messy or anything, but putting bags under their eyes and making them look like they're exhausted. Of course, Troy's trying not to nod off to sleep, and there she goes. And again, that same eyes in the dark, one moon circles. Give this actor some credit too. Yes, you do hear the telepathic voice lines that they have for this episode, but the fact that he pretty much has to look like he lost his mind while laying on that bio bed in sick bay. And you see that crew member just staring off into space. No one can dream except for Deanna, but Deanna gets nightmares. Yep, if they don't find a solution, then the same thing that happened on the Pertain will happen on the Enterprise. And there you see Whoopi Goldberg. Regardless of what you think about her, whether you like her politics, whether you don't like her politics, she wasn't bad as guided. So if you recall, in Best of Both Worlds Part 3, their plan against the Borg was to channel all the power to the main deflector dish and use the main deflector dish as a weapon against the Borg ship. Well, they're doing the same thing here to try to free themselves. Now, remember how I said, watch what Worf attempts to do. And Troy knows she can sense it. Of course, Worf has a ceremonial knife. He's performing a self deletion ritual. A Klingon's greatest fear, not being a warrior, not being strong. And of course, Troy's trying her best to talk Worf out of it. Now, for anyone who is watching this live, or if you catch this on the replay, if there was one specific episode you think should be watched and discussed around Halloween, what episode do you think that should be? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat. Whichever episode gets the most recommendations for Halloween, that's the episode we'll go with. The same thing that Troy's been hearing. When she goes to sleep and experiences her nightmares. Andrews is repeating it. There's a correlation. So we're learning more. Now, you think Dr. Crusher would know that there is no technology, at least Starfleet technology, that can block telepathic signals. But again, it's also probably due to the lack of sleep. I mean, we've all been there where we've had a night where we didn't get much sleep. We go to work the next day, and but we're just not all there. Or I've heard some people saying it. I've even said it myself. You know, the lack of sleep, you go into work and you're just on autopilot. So Data wanted to send a complex message, but Troy saying no, it has to be simple. In one word, one phrase. I'm not going to say what it is they want. And this is what Star Trek does best. Coming up with a plan, of course, trying to deduce, what the solution might be before they even implement a plan. So they even have a cortical stimulator that'll maintain the proper electrical activity in someone's brain in the 24th century. Everybody on the Enterprise has lost their ever loving mind. And you got to have a good old fashioned Star Trek brawl, don't you? Okay, Marina, in this scene, while you're laying on the bio bed, we just want you to fall asleep, okay? And the buster collectors are those red things on the front of the nacelles for anyone who didn't know. Now, depending on the ship, they're not all red. Hey, Godzilla, how are you doing? Godzilla says this is one of those random TNG episodes I remember so well. Now, do you really mean that, or are you saying that as a joke? Because if you really mean it, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or at least see your thoughts on the episode in the chat. And they've run out of deuterium. Godzilla says, "No, seriously, I really enjoyed this episode. The trap aspect, the dream aspect, all of it. Yeah, it's one of the good episodes of season 4. Because I was saying earlier, I almost thought about selecting the episode Cupid for tonight, but then I thought, no, it's going to be Night Terrors. And it shows that Star Trek can do their own kind of spooky horror story, but in Star Trek's own way. I'm not the biggest TNG fan. I know Heretic. It's fine. Either you like TNG or you don't. But this was a great episode. Yeah, because you see at the very beginning of this episode what has happened to the crew of the Britain, and then you see what starts happening to the crew of the Enterprise as the crew's unable to get into REM sleep. So the message of this episode is make sure you get a good night's sleep. But like I told you, Gunslinger, I mean, having work jobs in retail and such and other jobs, I'm used to, getting off late one night, then having to be back early in the morning. Some days, yes, it was like being a zombie. And like I said earlier, essentially going on autopilot. You're welcome, Lady Mist. So, what did you all think of this episode? We know Godzilla likes it. Door Girl, Shane, what did you two think of the episode? Good choice for tonight? Lady Mist? Don't be afraid. I won't bite. Well, maybe I'll just get angry like a Klingon. How dare you not like this episode? What is wrong with you? Are you Romulan? No, I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. But yeah, this is just one of those episodes I was, thinking through episodes of the original series, of course, TNG, DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise. And I was going, you know what? Night Terrors. Only because it is one of the good episodes of season 4. It deals with a problem, there is a solution, and it's one of the episodes where it doesn't deviate too much to, a B plot from the A plot or go to a C plot that really have nothing to do with the episode. I don't mind episodes that have the A and B plots, but sometimes, you know, you run into episodes that have one cohesive plot, and that just makes the episode so much more than the alternative of, having a fantastic A plot and then maybe a so-so B plot. And not liking this episode brings you great dishonor to your clan. Yeah. Uh, let's see. Yeah, it is. I admitted after we watched Q last a couple of weeks ago that wasn't one of Deep Space Nine's better episodes, but as I explained during that episode of The Adventure Continues a couple of weeks ago, it was a way to get eyes onto Deep Space Nine, with Deep Space Nine being a new show. Well, how are we going to do it? We're going to bring in a popular character that you know from The Next Generation. What's my favorite TNG movie, and why is it First Contact? Why is it First Contact? I'll give you a reason why it's First Contact, because it deals with Picard's PSD after having been assimilated by the Borg and best of both worlds. And the aftermath of that, of course, Borg, where we have Hugh, and they wanted to use Hugh as a weapon to destroy the Borg. And then we see the aftermath of that in Descents Part 1 and 2. And, finding out that Picard still has nightmares about being assimilated into the Borg collective, even though he seemed perfectly fine after the episode Family from this very season, season 4 of Next Generation. But just because he appeared perfectly fine on the outside, you don't know what's going through someone's mind on the inside. The outward appearance could be deceiving you. And I want to thank Fat Steven JFG for stopping by. He has gifted one Pacific Forum 4 membership, and that Pacific Forum 4 membership went to the one and only Mexican Iron Man. So, Mexican Iron Man, congratulations on getting that Pacific Forum 4 Stealth is Optional membership from Fat Steven JFG. And Steven, thank you very much for stopping by the stream tonight. Really appreciate it, brother. Let's see what Shane had to say here. It's a good psychological mystery. It's not one of the episodes I strongly remembered seeing too many times. It's honestly, Shane, it's one of those episodes I don't always go back to it to sit through it and watch all the way through multiple times. I have certain episodes that I absolutely will sit down and watch over and over and over again because I don't get tired of them. And one of the episodes that I never get tired of from Next Generation is Sins of the Father. And let's see, I want to make sure for those of you who are in the chat that I'm keeping up with what's going on. And the Godzillionaire says, I do miss episodic shows like this where you could have been a complete bottle episode that was almost a horror thriller episode. Yeah. And the thing, as you know, about episodic episodes, there, Godzillionaire, is you don't have to watch a show from the first episode of a season and continue with it, episode after episode after episode, just to know what's going on. With episodic episodes, yes, they will have connections to certain episodes that have happened before, but with an episodic episode, it resets each and every week. There are things, again, that do stay constant as far as the character's growth and everything, and things that have happened in previous episodes, like I just mentioned. But it's not like how DS9 got, or even episodes and seasons of Enterprise where it was more serialized, where you had to keep up with what was going on Deep Space Nine, especially as it got into the Dominion arc, then bringing in the Klingons as enemies again, and keeping up with all that and how everything ties together. Or, what Enterprise, when it came to the Zindi plot line and how you had to watch each and every episode just to know what the heck was going on. Yeah, they might throw in a standalone episode here and there, but for the most part, all the episodes being serialized, you had to keep up with it each and every week if you could. I couldn't do it each and every week when some of the episodes originally aired. That's why I recorded them on VHS to watch later. And Shane says TNG never got a great movie. We all know why they had the Borg. Excuse me. Sorry about that. But we all know why they had the Borg for First Contact, because the Borg at the time were popular enemies in Star Trek. Then, of course, the Borg keep appearing on Voyager and get watered down. And you see episodes of Voyager where they beam a torpedo, for instance, a photon torpedo, for instance, onto a Borg ship, and then they detonate it and they destroy the Borg ship. The Borg, they just weren't the threat they were originally supposed to be. When Q flung the Enterprise into Borg space in Q Who, and the Enterprise crew was encountering them, the Borg cube basically carves up a section of the Enterprise D hull and takes a few crew members for assimilation. It told you that there's a bigger threat out there now. I really wish they would have followed through with Conspiracy from season 1 of Next Generation, with those aliens that were inside the people, and the only thing that you saw sticking out of the necks was their little organism that was sticking out of their neck so they could breathe. I really wish they would have followed up with that. Who who are they? What are they? Why are they? Don't worry about it, DJ. I know you're busy, but I appreciate you being here, brother. I always appreciate you being here. Whether you're watching, whether you're listening, whether you're lurking, I appreciate it, man. And Godzilla says, I mean, what did TNG have? One, maybe two-parter episodes per season. I mean, especially when you get to season 3, 4, 5, it just seemed like that became the formula, not just for Next Generation. It's even something that Baron has brought up on Pop Talk a few times, and even on this show a few times. If there was a new Star Trek series, and I'm not talking about the Kurtzman crap, don't get me started with that. But excuse me, my allergies are bugging me today. But but you know how it tended to be. You had a two-parter for the season finale. Season 3 was Best of Both Worlds Part 1. Season 4, Best of Both Worlds Part 2. Started the season for season 4. Then season 4 of Next Generation was Redemption Part 1. Season 5 begins with Redemption Part 2. Then you have Descent Part 1. And you have Descent Part 2. And then it goes into Deep Space Nine. And I actually would say that Deep Space Nine had a three-parter. And it started in season 2 of Deep Space Nine. You had the season finale, Jem'Hadar, and then to start off season 3 of Deep Space Nine, you had the Search Part 1 and the Search Part 2. but that's just my opinion. But it still continued in Deep Space Nine. It still continued on Voyager and even Enterprise. It's like I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to give the fans something to look forward to, especially leaving on that cliffhanger. Would Picard have died at the end of season 3 going into season 4? Excuse me. I'm not going to get into my thoughts on what I think should have happened, going into season 4 of Next Generation with Best of Both Worlds Part 2 and Picard. I'll save that for when we get to that episode. But I've always had my thoughts on how different the show would have been if they gone a certain direction. Let's see. Let me catch up here. I blame DS9 for giving us Kim Kardashian and her family. Yes, keeping up with the Kardashians. I was sorry. Like I said, my allergies are bugging me today. I was just translating my voice in Japanese at work now. I need a break. I get you, brother. I know Thursday night you had stopped by and you said that you were working on getting your voice translated into Japanese, and you thought that'd be a good idea so people could understand you instead of having to use subtitles and captions in order to know what you're saying, or you know YouTube's feature of having an AI voice, translate in the language of choice what you're saying, whether some words can actually be translated, or sometimes there is no English translation. Or, well, basically what I was going to say was there is no translation for an English word in another language. But with this show, the goal has always been to highlight a specific episode each and every other Saturday and talk about the episode and give people a reason, as to why they should watch this particular show, the Gene Roddenberry era. Uh, sorry, I hated that my allergies are kicking up again, but the Gene Roddenberry era of Star Trek, the Rick Berman, Michael Piller, Jerry Taylor era of Star Trek that involved the middle half of Next Generation's run all the way to Enterprise. Granted, Michael Piller and Jerry Taylor were gone before the end of Voyager. They had gone their separate ways. They've done other things, of course. Unfortunately, both Jerry Taylor and Michael Piller are no longer with us. But Star Trek, as far as I'm concerned, is still a valuable show to watch. It's still a show that you can learn a thing or two just about yourself. You know, how would you approach certain situations as opposed to how the show approaches certain situations? It doesn't tell you that you should be on one side or another. It lets you decide. And I know I've said this plenty of times before during Pop Talk. The thing that really makes me go away from the current era of Star Trek is that it tells you what you should think, how you should think, and why you should think that way. While these shows left it up to you. Said, okay, who was right in this situation? Was Kirk right in this situation? Was Core right in this situation? No, was Cisco right in this situation? Was Ducat right in this situation? What about Janeway and Tuvix? Even now, some almost 30 years later, since the episode Tuvix aired. It's still a debate. Did Janeway make the right call when it came to Tuvix, who was a fusion of Neelix and Tuvok? And basically separating the two and making them one species again. Basically, Tuvok a Vulcan and Neelix the Talaxian again, instead of a combined effort. And DJ Ronnie G is saying hello to Lady Mist. And it says, thank you for the turtle grub. And DJ says about Ducat that he was always right, according to Cardassian Central Command. Well, yeah. Cardassian Central Command or the Obsidian Order, take your pick. Take your pick, because we learned one thing on DS9 is that Garrick, plain, simple Garrick, was part of the Obsidian Order, as was Anabran Tain, who we were pretty much given the clues that Anabran Tain was Garrick's father. But as far as Night Terrors is concerned, it shows that Star Trek can do that psychological thriller type of episode in the Star Trek universe. So if you are into psychological thrillers, you're really going to enjoy this. And if I were to rate this episode, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10, because I really think that maybe they could have gone just a little longer with this episode, dealing with some other aspects of what maybe an alien was experienced on the Enterprise. Yes, I know we have Worf, but what are the other species on the Enterprise experiencing with the lack of REM sleep? I think that would have been interesting to kind of delve into a little bit. But as far as the rest of the show is concerned, I'm going to go ahead and call it for now, unless you all have anything you want to add about this episode or say about this episode. You may go ahead while I wait to see if anyone is interested in opining their thoughts on this episode. I'm going to say thank you to the Admiral herself, Lady Miss. Thank you, Lady Miss, for being here tonight and continuing the adventure that is Star Trek. Of course, we have Shane and Dork Girl, who joined us over on the Cosme side. So thank you very much. And hello, Outlaw Bill. I'm sorry you missed the episode, brother, but come back in about 3 weeks. That'll be the next episode of the Adventure Continues, a Star Trek discussion. And right now, it's technically going to be Space Seed. And my guest will be Stone Cold Loki. Now, if something does change, I will definitely let everybody know. Just look for a post in the post section on the YouTube channel, or if you're following me over on X, I will definitely say something about it, just to let everybody know what's going on. But as of right now, we are going to be discussing Space Seed, and I can't wait to get into that discussion with Loki. And especially when you look at Space Seed, and you see that out of all the original 79 episodes of the original series, that was the episode that helped Nicholas Meyer and Harv Bennett say, that's the episode we're going to base Star Trek 2 around. But I also want to thank Godzillionaire for stopping in. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I also want to thank Fat Steven JFG for stopping in and also gifting that Pacific Forum 4 Stealth is Optional membership to Mexican Iron Man. Thank you very much, brother, and welcome to Pacific Forum 4. As far as the membership is concerned there, Mike, glad to have you here. And I know you're a very busy man, but I'm glad to know you're around, brother. And of course, DJ and D Talk. You're never late, man. I'm always glad you're here because without all of you, there is no Pacific Forum for. Yes, I know. I know. Would I like to see more people in the chat for these and Pop Talk and the game streams? Of course, but that's something I have to work on. That's something that I need to focus on how can I get more people to come in. It's not on you guys to try to, get more people on. I mean, the only thing I can ask you all to do, and it's free, is to share out the stream, repost the stream on YouTube and Rumble. Of course, share it out on Blaze. And if you're watching on your phone, watching on your tablet, I don't know if it works during the live streams. I know it works if you're watching a video or you're watching a live stream after it's over. If you hit the hype button while you're watching it on your tablet or phone, and you have the hype points, that's the points that you see in the chat above your names. But like DJ, if you look at his, he's got the crown with the purple background and he's got 82 points. Well, if he takes all his points that he has and he decides that he wants to hype a video on a channel that he's watching, then he can spend those points to hype the video. But the fact that you're all here, and for those of you who have shared out the streams or continue to come back, I do genuinely appreciate all of you. And until the next episode of The Adventure Continues, a Star Trek discussion, where as long as things don't change, we will be talking about Space Seed. But you know what? That's 3 weeks from now. Anything can change. But as long as things don't change, that's the episode that we will be talking about on July 11th at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I invite you all to join us for the Sunday edition of Pacific Forum 4 Pop Talk at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time tomorrow evening. We will be having the watch party of Full Metal Jacket for tomorrow's edition of Pop Talk. I do apologize for not being able to have that watch party on Wednesday. Unfortunately, my internet service provider was doing some maintenance, so the connection was intermittent. There were times where it was on, and then it seemed like as quickly as it was on, it was off again. So that watch party was rescheduled for tomorrow. Then, of course, we've got the game streams for next week. On Tuesday, I'll be getting into Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2, and I'll be playing the campaign for that. Then we have Wednesday's Pop Talk. I don't know what we're going to talk about for Wednesday, but between now and then, I'll come up with something. Because I am looking at articles to see, what we can talk about by Wednesday. Of course, also paying attention to any articles that might come out between, now and Wednesday that we can definitely discuss. But Space Marine 2 for Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Pop Talk for Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We've got Mouse PI for Hire at 6 p.m. Eastern for Thursday. And then, of course, the following Sunday's Pop Talk as well. And then, of course, July 1st, we will have a watch party of The Patriot on Pop Talk as well. But until then, everybody, as Lady Ben says here, take care and live long and prosper.